right, welcome everybody. Thank you for taking up to the front rows. Everybody always sits in the back. I should just remove these rows. Right, you just remove them. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being here this evening on a sunny evening. My name is Justin Irish. There we go. Is it working? Okay. My name is Justin Irish, and I am the superintendent, and I'm really glad to see you all this evening. I want to share with you about the process as a whole so you understand your role today. When we hire principals, we go through an exhaustive process that includes multiple steps in the process. So at first we have an interview team that meets with candidates. And the interview team is a formal process that has indicators of success for each question answered, and it's a formal interview. So we have questions that we ask every candidate. That interview team will then make a recommendation of 2 to 3 people to move forward as finalists. Those 2 to 3 people then have a activity that we run them through at the site at each school. So in this case, it was at the middle school. We had the leadership team, a mock leadership team, a team of teachers and classified staff and administrators who came together, and the candidate had to run through an exercise of interpreting data, looking at school improvement planning processes, and engaging the team in goal-setting processes. And it was a real exercise that they had to run through with real data, real information about the school. And we were looking for indicators like, 1, can they engage in visioning? Can they engage a team in conversations? Is it an asset-based team where they're honoring all voices and all the things we want to see a leader do with a team of people? The second part of the process is looking to see, can they actually interpret data? Do they have are they able to look at the data, understand it, do their homework, and come to the team ready and prepared to lead a group of other people through the process of understanding information about kids and information about teachers, and then make claims and actions around what they want to do next. And then we analyze each candidate and how they did, and then those candidates also do a walkthrough of the school, and we use indicators to look to see how are they engaging with students as they're walking through the school. How are they engaging with teachers? What do they notice when they walk through classrooms? What do they notice when they walk through the cafeteria, when they walk through the hallways, when they're in the parking lot? All of the indicators of what we would want to see a principal do and how a principal would engage in all aspects of the school, we start to see how they do in that real life experiment. And then we have this process where they come in front of a community and they have an open, informal process where you ask them questions and they, on the spot, have to answer them as they would in any community meeting if they were principal. And then we have a final interview process where they come in and meet with me. I will then go through all of the data of each stage in the process, and I formulate questions based on what you guys are telling me. What did you tell me in this interview? What feedback did I hear from you? What feedback did I hear from the mock leadership team meeting? What feedback did I hear about their walk through the school? And what feedback did I hear about their formal interview process? And then I tailor my questions based on the strengths of each candidate and the wonderings about each candidate that came up in this process. And then I look at all of that information, and then we call references, and we make sure that they have positive working relationships in the previous jobs that they've had, and that their resume and their skills align with what their past supervisors say. And once I hear that information, I make a final decision based on who is best to lead the Anacortes Middle School. So there are multiple steps of this process. You are one step of this process, a very important step of this process. You're the informal process, where it's an informal town hall type setting, okay? We hope to make a decision by the end of the week or sooner, and we'll keep the community informed about that. So we have 2 candidates. The first one is Kia Denun, who is the current assistant principal at the middle school. And so take a moment, sorry. When between each candidate, please make sure to fill out your feedback forms. There are strengths and wonderings. You can fill it out on paper, or there's the QR code. For those of you who are online right now watching, there's a QR code. Those forms need to be submitted online. The online forms have to be submitted by 9 p.m. tonight, because I will be looking at them this evening and tomorrow morning, and there's hopefully a lot of them, and it's going to take me time to read them all. So I need a cutoff time by 9 p.m. tonight. Those of you who are filling out by paper, please fill it out before you leave. Okay? If you prefer to go home and fill out the survey before 9, you can do that too. Okay? I will read all the information tonight and tomorrow morning. And I do recommend that you fill out the forms as you're listening and in between, so you don't forget. That's my recommendation. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna introduce Kia as she comes up. Yeah. All right. It's a pleasure to see you, Kia.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Hello. It's nice to see all of you. Thank you. Obviously, I was very excited to come up here the first second I heard my name. So my name is Kia Dunan, and I, as you heard from Dr. Irish, I serve currently as the assistant principal at Anacortes Middle School, and I recognize the majority of you, so I'm grateful that you're here, especially because it's sunny outside. And for those of you that are at home viewing from wherever you are, hopefully you're at least enjoying the sun. Thank you for being with us. I am excited to share a little bit about myself with all of you tonight. Many of you probably don't know a lot about my past and kind of what got me here today. But I will say that a year ago when I accepted the position to serve at Anacortes Middle School, I was certainly not anticipating Mr. Harrington leaving us and me standing before you today seeking to serve as next year's principal. So I feel very grateful to be here. And just like many of you that are here and watching online, you are as dedicated to Anacortes as I am standing before you. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity. So growing up, I didn't grow up very far away. I grew up in Woodinville, and I would say that Woodinville High School was a fine high school. I would say it was a fine experience. I was very involved in school leadership. I was involved in athletics, but I would say that by the end of high school, if someone asked me today who is my favorite teacher, that person was a middle school teacher. And I would say that in high school, I don't know that I was much beyond whether I was performing on the soccer field or how I was performing in the classroom. I don't know that my teachers really knew a whole lot about me. They probably didn't know what I was passionate about. They weren't certainly helping me to grow kind of my personal character traits until I started to see what other classroom teachers were like. And that experience came from attending a high school leadership camp one summer. And it was the first time that I saw what an educator really was outside of just being in the classroom. It was someone that helps to grow your character, someone that helps develop not just your academic performance, that's someone that is really invested in you as a young person in the pathway that you want to see yourself on growing up. And that was my first time working with about 25 high school teachers and middle school teachers that really opened my eyes to what it was like to be a teacher. And that was the moment I decided I wanted to be one. And following that, I went to college. I studied to be a special education teacher, and I also studied organizational leadership, which kind of opened the doors for what my future pathway was going to look like. I started teaching in Federal Way public schools, working with students with disabilities, significantly profound behavior disorders, and then also somehow ended up teaching math, which was a surprise to myself. Later on, I moved to Lake Washington School District and worked as a high school special education teacher and department chair. And then I also had the opportunity to get back into school leadership and served as a high school activity coordinator and leadership teacher, class advisor, and pretty much anything I could get my hands on, I was involved in. I was also a soccer coach and was very fortunate that the girls on my field were outstanding, and we won state a couple of years in a row, so that was really fun. Following that experience, I would say that as a high school activity coordinator, I had an opportunity to really see what it was like to work on the administrative team, to really see what school leadership was like, and get invested in school reform with regard to school structures and systems, as well as really to dive into what does it look like to create school culture. And that was what really opened my eyes to becoming an administrator. So I decided to go back to school, and I got my degree in educational leadership, and decided that I really wanted to invest in myself as a school administrator. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to stay in Lake Washington School District and worked at Lake Washington High School as an associate principal for several years, which is a really great place to start my admin career. I was one of 250 administrators, which seems wild, standing here in Anacortes. And what I would say I learned in that experience was because of the size of that organization with 65,000 students that we were serving, we had to be a far more top-down structure just because of the number of people that were working in that organization. And for me, that was a really great way to start my educational career as an administrator, because I had very clear expectations. I had clarity around district policy and procedure, and I knew that on all 6 high school campuses, we were giving the same information to our schools. And that was a great first way to start out. However, over time, I was interested to see what it was like to serve in a place where, I will tell you, when it was a district leadership team meeting, if you were 5 minutes late in a room just like this with 250 people, it's standing room only. So for me, after a while, it got a little old, I would say. And so moving to a smaller district was kind of what I was seeking. I wanted to be a part of something where I was less of a deliverer of information and more of a person that was helping to create information, create change, and really dive into that school reform. From there, I had an opportunity to move to Snohomish School District, and that's where I worked at Snohomish High School and Centennial Middle School, and really loved that. That was where I was on a team of 25, and I really got to be a part of change, and that's what I love. And that is really just started when I was in high school. Being a part of school leadership and being a part of the same thing as an administrator is just one of my passions, and something that drives me to come to school every day to help grow our instructors, help support what's good instruction in the classroom, remove barriers for students, and create a place where students have the teachers that I had when I was at that leadership camp, the teachers that love their kids and know that on the weekends they had a baseball game and they asked about it, or went to the play to support the students. And that was really what I got to really see a lot more in Snohomish. Moving up to Anacortes was very, very cool for me. So I came to this community for many years. My parents were residents here, and this place was always my donut house visit and my opportunity to see my parents and then just kind of leave. And that was really what it was for many years. Then I met my partner, Ryan, who he was stationed here with the Navy. And then I started driving to Anacortes a lot more. And I was here far more regularly, which my parents loved. And then the opportunity at Anacortes Middle School came open, which to me was something I couldn't surpass. When I did my homework about Anacortes School District, it excited me to be in even a more tight-knit community, not just with the families, but also with the schools, the community. With one feeder high school, to me, is like one of the most beautiful and unique things that doesn't happen in very many places anymore. And learning about the values in our strategic plan are the things that I value the most, with rich instruction for students, high quality academics in the classroom, diversity and inclusion, and that emphasis with regard to social emotional learning, growing the whole child. And that's what brought me here. So I stand before you a year in, and I'm still very happy. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about kind of what we've been up to this year. So as with many schools across the nation, we weren't entirely sure what school was going to be like this fall. There was a lot of unknowns. Our students were still wearing masks. We knew that last year with cohorts, we didn't know what it was going to be like to bring everyone back. And we were reminded of some wonderful things. We were reminded that we still have awesome kids, no matter what. We were reminded that our students value rich instruction and they want to be engaged in their classroom. And we were reminded and somewhat surprised that our students might need a little bit more support in the social arena. I suppose we shouldn't have been fully surprised, but hey, our kids are coming back from being at home for a few years, and schools look different now. So with some of the reminders, we also were reminded that our students value high quality instruction. They value consistency. They value a positive school environment that is safe and predictable. And that is what we've been working on this year at Anacortes Middle School. We have also spent quite a bit of time talking about differentiation in the classroom. We've been talking about what does it look like to meet the needs of our various learners, because our kids are all over now, more so than they have been in the past. And we are spending quite a bit of time this year learning about trauma-informed practices so that we can have more intentional relationships with our students so that they feel included and happy to be back at school. I'm excited to say that we've really laid some wonderful groundwork that I'm proud of this year, and we also have room for growth. We have wonderful staff. We have staff that's committed to having our students back in the building and successful and improving instruction and removing barriers. And we also know that we have systems that we need to create or refine. We also know that in order to have a strong culture, we need to be able to focus on creating the conditions. I need to create the conditions so our staff can be successful with students, and that our students feel like they can feel a part of the school community, but also have opportunities to thrive in the classroom. And again, I'm excited about the work that we started and look forward to continuing that work moving forward. I think that's it. Thank you.
I think one of the biggest concerns I have right now is for our community, for the world, for our children especially, is the overwhelming mental health crisis that's going on. And I think what I see is possibly part of the contributing factors for our children is there's an overabundance of choice. They are bombarded from every direction, overwhelmed, I think, sometimes by too much choice. And what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you for that question. Well, that's a large question, I would say. I agree that our students, with the age range that they are in middle school, they're interested in everything and exploring and trying everything. And I think it's our job to help to narrow the focus so that our students can start to develop into the young people that they're turning into, starting at age 12 and going through high school experiences. I think with regard to choice, I don't know if you're referring to course selections or just choice in general with what they might get involved in. Am I? Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's important for students to have choice. And I would say that because we want our students invested in their future and invested in the decisions that they're making. And when students have choice, it also gives them an opportunity to learn, because we know that our students are going to make choices and they're going to be successful. And we know that there are going to be choices that they're going to make that we're going to help to support them when it hasn't maybe been the best choice for them. With regard to our academics, our courses that we're offering, that's been a big conversation that we're having this year in terms of what should be the course offerings that we have for students and how can we help them to think about their, which is kind of crazy to think about graduation already, but to think about being intentional so that the courses that they are taking in middle school help to make them lead to a pathway that's successful in high school. And what other courses might we need to revisit to make sure that we're not creating a distraction for our students. I think our students want to feel empowered. And I think at this age, it's probably for the most part, first times that our students are getting the opportunity to have a little bit of control. Elementary is so different than middle school. And so I think there's a balance there that we want to create for our students. And I think it's delicate and it's something that we want to refine and get feedback if our students aren't successful, if our parents or community members are thinking that we're missing the mark on something, that I would invite that conversation in. But I think that it's important that we do provide choice for our students without overwhelming them. Thank you. She's behind you.
Sorry.
She snuck up on you.
Teacher voice. Loud. I have two questions. I'm wondering how you feel about project-based learning at the middle, what that might look like at the middle school, and also standards-based learning.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. So I think, I can't say I've been in a school where we've fully been embedded in project-based learning. But I think that for students, especially in some of our courses, I know right now we have a robotics class, and that's very project-based. Same with our STEM classes. And what I see in those classrooms, that's when our students are extremely excited because they have an investment in what they're creating, and it's associated with what they're learning. And so the teachers, our staff create the conditions, and that's not just in those 2 classrooms. It's happening in a lot of places. I know that our teachers set parameters aligned to standards, and students get to create, which I think is really fun. And it brings, for students that have varied learning styles, it is the opportunity for students that are kinesthetic learners to display their mastery of learning in such a different way than when they're performing on a written test. And so I think it's a conversation that I would love to engage in with our staff if that was a direction that we wanted to go at Anacortes Middle School. But right now, I think that we do have certain teachers that are standards-based, and I think that does provide clarity for our students when there's this direct correlation to the instruction in the classroom as well as what deliverables students are performing in terms of how they're meeting mastery, and then students can mark their own progress, which I think is really valuable. And for mathematically, I think it makes a lot of sense when you think about standards-based grading as a former math teacher. It's pretty easy to kind of think about the chunks of how the math works with students performing 1 through 4. I love standards-based grading with regard to if you turn in something, you're going to get feedback. And it doesn't mean you just get an automatic 0, because we know research shows us that when a student doesn't turn in an assignment, they have a missing assignment, or they get a 0 on something, it is so much more challenging to come back from that and to perform and meet the marks in the classroom that you can be successful to move forward when that 0 is kind of staring you at the face. So I think that standards-based grading can be very effective, especially because it aligns to rubrics. But I don't know that all of our teachers are there right now. I know that some of them are. And in middle schools, I think that that's a conversation worth having. But I would want to make sure that if we do that, if we go down that direction, that we're calibrated as staff and that we have an agreement around what does that look like. How would we give feedback to students, and what does it look like to communicate our student progress within our grading system for our family members so they're also apprised. Thanks, Sky.
Hello.
Hello.
Just following the line that you were saying that students moving from elementary school going to middle school, they see it's a big gap. It's a big
change.
jump. It's a big change.
Mhm.
So, as far as behavior and accountability, I would like to know a little bit more. What's your vision on as far as making sure that the students are following and getting consequences, if we can put it like
Sure.
that, just seeing
Yeah.
a result of their behavior in school.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that question. I appreciate it. I think so. Fabulous question. I would say that it's not just for sixth graders, for all of our students. It's been a big learning for us this year to understand what the needs are from our students. And I would say that for our staff, there was a moment maybe a little later than we anticipated that we all kind of came together and thought, oh, okay, so there's a lot we need to reteach. And there were a lot of surprises. And I will say that to this day, I'm still surprised with the noise level in the hallway. It is, we have students that really like to project. And so what we have spent a lot of time with recalibrating this spring, especially and through the winter as a staff, is how do we set the conditions so our students can be successful? And what does it look like to teach and reteach and model and teach and reteach our expectations to our students? And I will say that it is not public information yet, but you just opened the door to the work that we've really been spending time with this spring. So we've been talking a lot about, without saying it, really this PBIS type of problem solving model in school, and thinking through how do we make sure that our students know exactly what's expected of them so that they can be successful, and how do we give feedback to our students when they're not being successful. And sometimes a consequence isn't always punitive. Sometimes a consequence is a reminder. Sometimes a consequence is a learning opportunity so our students get to reflect on how their behavior or their presence or their language impacts other people and creates a disruption or causes harm to others. And I will tell you that through those conversations, the most valuable learning our students are experiencing is when they reflect personally on their choices and demonstrate for us that they've had kind of a change of heart and that they learn and move forward and behave differently. And then, of course, there are students at all times of our lives, we need to be held accountable. And the accountability looks different depending on what the behavior that we're seeing. But we have agreed on 3 expectations and beliefs, I would say, as a staff that we are revisiting and rolling out moving forward for next year. And we have a commitment as a staff to do a lot of teaching right in the beginning of the year about what does it look like to respect people at our school? What does it look like to respect property at our school? And what does it look like to respect learning? And there's a surprise, but that's what we've agreed on as a staff just recently. So you will see that next year. That's a huge thing for us right now. We're extremely invested in proactively teaching our students so that they can be successful. And also as a staff being committed to teaching behavior isn't what I do on the first week of school. Teaching behavior is what I do every day in every interaction that I have with every student all year long so that they can be successful. Thank you.
Well, that was perfect. That fits right into my question.
Oh, thanks, James.
So I just modified it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. What would you see as your biggest challenge in regards to now, from what you said, implementing student accountability in terms of classroom and school environment that is inclusive for learning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think so a few things. So I would say that one of the things I'm excited about that we have this new adoption as a staff is that we have made some agreements. And when we formally came to consensus, as you know, everyone gave us a thumbs up, showing us that they are invested in supporting this agreement and that we are going to teach consistently to all of our students. And what that looks like is there's always professional autonomy with how I want to teach this in my classroom and how I'm going to engage with students. But what I will say is sometimes some teachers are more interested in stepping in the hallway and to have that quick check-in with a student than others. And so that is one of the barriers that for me, I've learned this year that is something I need to help support our staff and develop the skill so that every staff feels empowered, that they can call me up to the classroom or my colleague up to the classroom and say, I just need a moment with a student. And then I would go step into the classroom and take care of the classroom. And so we can continue instruction and have that teacher create that relationship with the student and say, whatever happened in the classroom, let's talk through it and invite you back into the learning or give you a couple minutes to collect yourself. And so I think recalibrating what does that look like so we can really embed restorative practices into our daily instruction with students. And I think one of the wonderful things about what we've agreed on as a staff right now so far is that if we go down this path, our students are not going to miss instruction. Our students are going to be able to stay in the classroom. And right now, our students are not sustaining in the classrooms. And so that's a big thing for us. Our goal is that our students have access to rich instruction and rich opportunities to develop relationships and develop themselves socially. And when they're outside of the classroom, they're having other things like suspensions or detentions. It's not quite as motivating. And so I'd like for us to continue to develop our staff skill set so that every staff feels that they know how to navigate a challenging conversation and also now know how to get support with that. And then continuing to calibrate as a staff, my role is to help support our staff to be successful and also to engage in the hard conversations when I'm walking into spaces, because inevitably that happens. I need to walk into a classroom and remind teachers of what the expectation is and ensure that I'm supporting them in being successful, and also that we have that consistency across the school, because it is extremely confusing to our students going through 6 periods a day if 3 teachers are on the same page and 3 are not. And I can imagine myself that would be frustrating or tiring over the course of a day. And so I think those are probably the big things is supporting teachers to have some challenging conversations, and then also the accountability piece. Yeah, thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
You talked a little bit about like how kids have come back from the pandemic at a much larger range
Mhm.
of what they know and understand.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about how your views of that, like both in the classroom, like as a tier one strategy, and maybe outside of classroom with interventions?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that question. So, what I didn't share with you in my little opener is that I've had a lot of experience developing MTSS, which is what Kate is referencing over there, multi tiered systems of support. And that is when we are talking about our students having research based curriculum in their classroom so that all of our students have access to on grade level instruction. And when a student does not understand, which is highly possible, that we need to have a system in place during their school day to be able to support that student to be able to get intervention. And I think that it is our job to have a system of support for students built into our school day. So this year, I can't take credit for this because I walked into this system, which is awesome. Our staff last year spent some time planning to have an intervention time during our school day, which we call WIN time. And WIN stands for what I need. And on Wednesdays, as a staff, we have a commitment that we don't deliver new instruction. It's our opportunity within the classroom for our students to have intervention when they're missing instruction, if they haven't mastered a skill or they need support, or maybe it's they need to retake a test or demonstrate test corrections. There's a lot of different ways for our students to have intervention. I think it's also wonderful when teachers are not responsible for delivering new instruction. They can have the opportunity to work in small groups with students, or they can create rotations where students are going through various activities. I've seen it done in a lot of different classrooms, a lot of different ways. And we also, I was headed down some pathway and then I lost it. We are doing WIN on Wednesdays, and we are also talking. Thank you. Here we go. We're also talking about what does it look like to grow that out more, so that we know how to give feedback to students, and so that our students can track when they're making progress towards those contents, or excuse me, those standards. And we have also talked a little bit about next year. Is that something that as a staff we're going to learn more about, and do we want or need more of it? Because we also want to give opportunities for enrichment for our students. And I've worked in a school where it is so fun for our students to be able to be excelling and achieving so well that they get an opportunity to either enrich academically, or maybe it's a chance for them to go to a Zumba class, because every now and then it is extremely fun for a student that works so hard and is excelling in their classes to be able to have an enrichment opportunity that is outside of their typical day. And those are the systems that we are just getting started. WIN has been successful this year, and it's our work moving forward to continue to outline what does success look like for WIN, and how might we grow that intervention system during our day in school. Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. All right, as we transition for the next candidate, please take a moment to reflect on your sheets or online with your feedback around her strengths and wonderings. Thank you. And in about 5 minutes, we'll introduce the next candidate. All right. At this time, I would like to introduce our next candidate, Erica McCole. So you have Erica. You have about 10 minutes to present about yourself, and then from there, the community, just open up the floor to the community. We have Chloe, our wonderful student board rep, who will be roaming around and handing the mic to people. All right. Okay. Glad you're here.
Good evening. So when I get really nervous, my lips like shake and tremble. So I'll try to get that under control. I just want to start by saying thank you to all of you that are here in person and online. I know a Tuesday after a 3-day weekend, the struggle can be real. So I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to be here in person and online. A little bit about myself. So I'm married to a wonderful, supportive husband. We have 2 girls. They're in 2nd and 3rd grade, and they're chomping at the bit to be 3rd and 4th graders. They should be wrapping up karate right now. So they're probably not watching me, which is a good thing. We're pretty active as far as hobbies go. We do some scuba diving, rock climbing, kayaking. We just really like to be outdoors. We live here on island. We frequent Calico Cupboard. So that's where you can find us on the weekends usually. About my professional life. So I'm currently the assistant principal at Cedar Crest Middle School, which is right down the road in Marysville. We're 6th through 8th, about 850 students. Prior to that, I was with Edmond School District at their district office. My title there was Multi-Tiered Systems of Support Student Success Manager. What that really means is I worked at the district office alongside all 35 of their principals, working towards implementing a systematic framework targeting students where they are at through tiered interventions and data-based decision-making using strategies that we know that work. That was right about December 2020, and that's when I relocated from the Central Valley of California up here to Whidbey Island. So the bulk of my educational career has been with Clovis Unified. If you're not familiar with it, it's right in the center of California. We're the 14th largest district in California. In my most recent role there, I was an administrator at the Reagan Educational Center. So we were 7th through 12th grade complex, and we had 4,200 students. My role there was overseeing discipline. So as you can imagine, there was never a dull moment. There's a picture, may or may not be a picture of me holding a kitten and a vape in one hand. Like this is how our day goes at a complex like that. So learned a lot there. It was a great experience. Clovis kind of raised me up and gave me a good foundation of where I am today and the leadership skills that I have today. Prior to that, I was the first elementary counselor in the school district. I worked with most of our needy Title I high poverty elementary schools where we did a lot of behavior management, social emotional learning, and those pre-intervention strategies before we kind of lose those kids to some learning loss. Prior to that, I was in various support roles. I started in the district as a free unpaid intern, so I had to roll up my sleeves and get pretty dirty doing the work to really appreciate how you grow as an educator and kind of starting from the bottom and working your way up from there. I will then move to I want you guys to know my philosophy on education. So I had a little pamphlet to hand out to you guys because I thought I only had 5 minutes, but I have 10, so I might cover everything that's on that handout for you guys. But my philosophy on education is really 4 points. And the first one, which is most important, is student-centered. So regardless of what office I'm ever in, the first thing that goes on my wall is what's best for kids. Because that's the question that I ask myself continually throughout the day. If there's ever a tough call to be made, a decision to be made, that's the first question I ask myself. And if the answer is no, then we go back to the drawing board and we need to make a decision that has kids' interests first. Even if it's a tough call that I know that may not be popular, if it's what's best for kids, then that's what we're standing by. The next one is parent partnerships. And that's, again, you guys being here in person and online. Myself as a parent, I know how I want to be treated when I go into my daughter's school buildings. And that's how I want to treat parents when they interact with me. I want you to feel heard, supported, and valued. If you send me an email, if you call, if you swing by the school, you will be heard, and I want you to feel supported and valued in that. This is a partnership, and we have to do this together, especially in middle school. The next one is connectedness, so that's a close third. We know that students, in order for them to succeed academically and socially, they have to feel a sense of belonging to their school. There has to be some connectedness that ties them to school, whether that's athletics or co-curriculars or clubs. So it's definitely a priority for me to make sure that every one of our students in our student body has some sense of belonging to our school. They know that there's at least one adult on our campus that cares for them and loves for them and wants to see them succeed. The next one is high expectations and accountability. So I come from a law enforcement family, so accountability is a pretty big deal for us in our household. But of course, I want students to feel loved and supported and cared for. I want to be able to show them compassion, but I'm also going to have high standards for them and high expectations because I know they can rise to the occasion. And I know they're going to have a team of adults behind them that are pushing them to succeed and achieve their best self. And that goes with accountability. I want us to have middle schoolers who are prepared for the next step of high school. They're prepared for the responsibility and the accountability that comes with that. And then eventually leaving Anacortes School District as well-rounded adults that are ready for society and can look back and say, you know what, those may have been hard lessons we learned in middle school, but I came out a better person because of that. And that means really working with our elementary schools as we get our little baby 5th graders coming into 6th graders, and we're working with our high school as we're sending off our 8th graders that think they're grown, that are about to have a reality check when they get to high school, and making sure that we're aligned and we're really launching them forward to middle school and preparing them for success in high school. I think that's all I have. So questions can start now.
Nope.
I wondered two things. First of all, your experience or philosophy on project-based learning at the middle school in particular, and where that might play a role in our classrooms. And then also your feelings about standards-based learning, and again, whether you've had experience with that, like as a grading system, and whether or not you'd be willing to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, perfect. Well, first of all, I'm always willing to have conversations. So that's a no-brainer. But when it comes to project-based learning, the time I spent with Edmonds School District, I split the role of summer school principal. And it was the first time that we had offered summer school for our middle school students because, you know, we obviously knew there was that learning gap that needed to be addressed. And so we did a project-based learning. I don't have extensive experience with it, but I did have my hands on all of the details in preparing for that summer school program. I collaborated with a group of educators while we built and established what project-based learning would look like in a summer school setting. So we had 2 projects that the students were going to work on. One was STEM and one was social justice. And I think in that environment, it was extremely important to remind kids what it felt like to learn, get them excited about learning, get their hands on valuable material that wasn't just an A through F grade. As far as standards-based learning, the district that I'm currently at is inching their way towards that. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that that's a systems change. And that's something that takes a lot of collaboration with all of our stakeholders. That's parents, community members, teachers. Everyone has to be on board for this to work. And so I'm just speaking from my experience right now. Like I said, we're inching towards it. So that's understanding that standards-based means kids can turn in work whenever they want to. There's no lates, there's no due dates, having that flexibility. My daughter's schools just went to standards-based, and Mom, I can't wait to get to a 4. So to me, it defeats the purpose because they're still counting their grade as a number as opposed to a letter. But I do think there's a time and place for it. And I do think, again, that it's a systems change that we have to make sure that all of our stakeholders are on board with this idea and that we can go through as a cohesive unit. I'm not good at comedy, so I don't have any one-liners for you guys.
Hi, thanks for being here and thanks for your interest in Anacortes. A question I have is what experience or what are things that you have been involved in that you thought were productive to create an environment where students felt a part of everything that connected, just like you were talking about, but with inclusive diversity for marginalized students and marginalized groups within our community, and what are some of the things that you've done that you would think would be productive or things you would like?
Yeah, great, thank you. So speaking to what I've done this year, I noticed that there in my current school building that there was a kind of a disconnect from our students to our school building. And part of that was just coming back from remote learning, and thankfully TikTok gave them lots of entertainment to have fun with school. So we needed to really get creative on how we're going to make kids feel ownership in their school and how we're going to bridge that connectedness. So I started a student safety committee with a group of students who was open to anyone who wanted to join. And what I found was it was a lot of our students who didn't feel like they were athletically inclined to participate in sports. There wasn't really a club that was geared towards them, but they saw a need to fill a gap in the school of how can we create ownership amongst our peers. I speak pretty frankly, kids get tired of going to the restroom and seeing it vandalized. So they wanted that opportunity to say, hey, I want to be a part of making our school better. So for me, I'm always looking for the gaps and the holes of what are we missing? Where are the kids that are leaving school right away and are more likely to get distracted in class because, again, it leads back to there's nothing tying them here. So identifying where our holes are. The current building I'm in right now, we have a lot of clubs that meet the needs of a lot of students, but again, there's still some that are missing. So again, we started peer tutoring on Wednesdays, which is giving those students that feel that they are extremely gifted academically, but don't really have a large friend group or just having trouble, again, with athletics or clubs. So providing outlets to reach the needs of all of our students and making sure, again, that everyone feels connected and just having a pulse on how your students are feeling. Is there a need for a club or an organization or a lunchtime meeting that is not available that they would like to be available? I really believe in student voice and how powerful that is. We as adults can tell them everything we want them to know, but if it comes from them, there's going to be more buy-in and it's going to be way more powerful. So I think sometimes it's just a quick survey of how's it going in school this year? Is there anything you would like to see happen? What can we do to make school more enjoyable for you? Mhm.
Thank you. It might sound like a silly question, but it's really it's very important to me as a parent of a rising sixth grader. Nowadays, elementary students have cell phones, and they feel like it's an extension to their hands. And so my question would be, what is your position as far as policy for the school as students using those cell phone in the classroom while there's class, using their cell phones in the hall? So what is your idea or your position on cell phones in the school?
This feels like a trick question. Thank you for that. So I can speak to what's going on in my building right now and kind of talk about the flaws that we see. So you're absolutely correct that even as adults, it's really hard for us to put our devices away. And we can't necessarily expect children to be 2 years on remote with devices in their face and then to just quit cold turkey. So what we've been working towards this year in my current building is no cell phones in class during instruction time. During passing, they're allowed to bring them out, check any notifications, and during lunch, they could have that out. But in the classroom, it's a non-negotiable. Devices are put away. I felt that was fair and reasonable because, again, we know that there's probably 20 Snapchat notifications on their phone in any one given period. And if we drop it all together, probably going to have chaos. That being said, the flaws in our system currently is that there's a breakdown in cohesiveness and consistency. So anytime it comes to a policy, of course, it starts from the top is what does our board policy say about this? What is the district policy that we're going to use as our justification? And then what is our building policy that we're all going to agree to as educators? Because consistency is absolutely crucial, especially when it comes to any kind of behavior or discipline. So the flaws that I'm seeing right now is in some classrooms, teachers allow cell phones. In other classrooms, teachers don't allow cell phones and they're sticking to our building-wide expectations. So that lends for conversations with adults in the room. We have to understand, so my background's in psychology and counseling and educational leadership. So we have to understand the cognitive load that students are coming to us. They already have to code switch from home to school. Those are two different rules, right? You can wrestle your brother at home, not at school. You can go to the bathroom freely at home, not at school. You have to ask permission. So we already have to ask them to adjust to those different settings. But when the rules change from classroom to classroom, That's more of their cognitive load they're having to use to know which teacher allows cell phones, which doesn't. So I think for any policy, especially cell phones, it has to be clear, consistent, and everyone has to be on board with it for it to fully work. Because I know for myself, if someone lets me get away with something with the other one doesn't, that's going to cause a friction with that person. So that then boils down to relationship building and earning the trust of our students.
Hi. So it sounds like your background is in counseling. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your background in instructional leadership, because sometimes counselors don't have as much experience with that. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, excellent. Good question. I kind of anticipated this. So it is no secret that I have never been a classroom teacher. However, I don't feel that I lack the skills to empower teachers to do their best work. Teachers are the craft of the work. And it's my job as a principal or future principal to make sure that they have any barriers removed so that they can do their best work in the classroom. I will speak to my instructional experience at the elementary level. As an elementary counselor, I had an amazing principal that I worked under, and she gave me a lot of autonomy to create those academic interventions and supports for our students. So some of you may be familiar with an SST or a student study team. We were finding that sometimes students would be referred to the SST team for an overarching what's going on with the student, where can we fill in interventions and supports. But what was missing was the automatic, basic, first-time best instruction with a whole classroom. So I was able to push into classrooms with teachers and guide them along the way of here's what could work for your student. Have you tried this first? We created a checklist that's just kind of the basic understandings of here's what every student should be receiving in your classroom. At the secondary level, I oversaw our social emotional learning curriculum. We had Character Strong as well. So I rolled that out as a model of I will push into your classroom and teach for you or teach alongside with you, or I will find a staff member who's trained to come in and teach for you. So if social emotional learning really isn't your forte, we have an adult or an educator on campus that will guide you that way. And then now in my current role, I'm evaluating a list of 21 teachers very familiar with the CEL 5D framework and how we evaluate teachers and instructional framework. I know that definitely can be viewed as a fault for me that I have never been a classroom teacher, but I'm a firm believer that as a leader, it's my job to empower the people that I work with, and I don't necessarily have to have walked in their shoes to be a leader and a mentor and a support for them. So thank you for that. I feel like I kind of rushed through my bio because I thought I only had 5 minutes remaining. But I just want to emphasize my deep desire to work in Anacortes School District. I was born and raised in the Central Valley, and I took a leap of faith moving up here to Whidbey Island. It's been one of the best decisions I've ever made, but I'm craving my hometown feel. Downtown Anacortes feels just like Old Town Clovis. If you've ever been there, probably not, but you know there's grandparents that their kids have been graduated many, many years, and they still buy tickets to all the football games. When you walk around with Clovis swag, it sparks a conversation of how about that game or how's this teacher doing? It's that community feel that I miss and I crave. I want to serve the community in which I reside, and that's how I view leadership, is I'm serving you, and this is a partnership. And I want to work together as a parent, as a mom, and as an educator as we raise these kiddos from middle school onto adulthood. So I just appreciate the time and the opportunity to be here. It's really amazing.
Thank you so much. All right. All right, so please take a moment to fill out your feedback forms. Again, a reminder that the electronic feedback forms are due by 9 p.m. Thank you so much. And when you're finished, you can turn them into the back table back here.